What's up guys, I'm Avarice Rose, and if I'm dressed the same way as I was in episode 1, that is because I am batching videos today. So, we are now on episode 2 of Haunted Castles of Scotland. I'm so excited to talk to you guys about the ones that I have found and picked out for us today to look at. The first being Stirling Castle, which is like goals to go to because it is creepy spooky. And the second is Duntrune Castle, which is a little bit more on the outskirts of, people when they think about haunted Scotland or haunted places, but I personally love Duntrune because the legend and lore behind their ghost is, it gets me right in the feels. So grab a drink, grab a snack, grab a blanket, and let's curl up and learn about the haunts of Stirling Castle. So a brief history of Stirling Castle. It is obviously in the town of Stirling, Scotland, and is one of the most important Scottish castles in history. It is a strategic fortification from at least the early 12th century and has had at least 8 sieges upon it, including several during the wars for the Scottish independence with William Wallace, with the last attempt coming in 1746 when Bonnie Prince Charlie unsuccessfully tried to overthrow the castle. Many kings and queens have been crowned at this castle, including Mary Queen of Scots in 1542. This castle is historically known as the seat for Scottish royalty for their kings and queens, quite like in modern day today, the castle that we most associate with the royal family is either Buckingham Palace or Windsor, but mostly Buckingham Palace. Stirling Castle is that castle, and it's the absolute power seat in the north. The land upon which the castle stands has passed through more hands than can be counted, from native tribes, from the kings of Mercia to the Picts in the 12th century, and so on. It is no wonder that the history is filled with as much bloodshed, treason, treasure, and pain as possible. It's therefore a perfect breeding ground for ghosts, spirits, and anything else that wants to hang around. The castle sits atop Castle Hill, which is an intrusive crag which forms part of the Stirling Sill geological formation. So it's surrounded on its sides by 3 steep cliffs, giving it a strong defensive position. And it is, when you look at this castle from the ground up, it's like up there. Like, it's crazy when you see pictures of it. And it's also surrounded by kirkyards or graveyards. Stirling Castle is now a scheduled ancient monument and is now a tourist attraction managed by the Historic Environment of Scotland. So it's a protected place and you can go visit when there isn't a pandemic. So let's talk about the most famous haunts of Stirling Castle. The most active sighting in Stirling Castle is that of a Highland ghost. Staff and visitors have often seen his apparition, often wearing a full traditional costume which includes kilt, sporran, the whole shebang. Mistaken for a tour guide on many occasions, visitors have been shocked when they approach him. Then he simply turns and walks away, vanishing in front of their eyes. That would be pretty interesting to see. In 1935, the Highland ghost was apparently captured on camera by an architect who was carrying out some surveying for upcoming building work. This phantom image also appears on the negative too. For those of you who don't know what a negative is, I'm aging myself now. When we used to take pictures with actual film and cameras, the film, the negative, is what came out of the slot, or that you would take to Walgreens or Walmart, and then the people behind would run the negative through the thing and give you your picture. That's a negative. Perhaps the most popular of Stirling's ghosts is that of the Green Lady. It's believed that she was a servant to Mary Queen of Scots. One night, the queen was asleep in her chamber when her bed curtains were set on fire by a candle at her bedside. The servant saved her life, only to lose hers in the process. Ever since her death, the Green Lady has been seen throughout the castle, possibly still looking to serve her queen, who met a very grim fate of her own. Some stories suggest that Mary, Queen of Scots, still haunts the castle herself. She has been linked to the ghost of the Pink Lady. She's seen wearing a flowing pink gown, walking from the castle to nearby Church of the Holyrood. Other stories suggest that the Pink Lady is a widow looking for her husband whose life was lost during a battle. There are also reports of phantom footsteps in the governor's block believed to emanate from one of the empty chambers upstairs, so who knows who's walking around up there. One thing to note about Mary, Queen of Scots, is that she was beheaded. So it's very possible that since this is the place where she came back after her husband, King Francis, passed away very young. She was still very young, and she came back and she was living at Stirling Castle. Probably a favored / pretty familiar place for her. So it makes complete sense that she would come back to it. Stirling Castle is one of the most visited castles in Scotland. Again, when we're not in the middle of a pandemic, it's pretty much open every single day, I believe. But it is surrounded by graveyards or, kirkyards, what they call church grounds in Scotland. A lot of dead people, a lot of battles happened here. You have a very good chance of running into some spooky things when you visit Stirling Castle. Duntrune Castle is located on the north side of Loch Crinan and is across from the village of Crinan in Argyll, Scotland. So it is in Argyll, as was Inverary Castle, which we'll get into. It's thought to be the oldest continuously occupied castle on mainland Scotland, and the castle is a Category B listing, so it is protected. It was originally built by the MacDougall clan in the 13th century, along with several other castles in the area, including the MacDougall stronghold of Dunolly Castle near Oban. Duntrune Castle was eventually taken by Clan Campbell. In the 17th century, the castle was besieged by the rival MacDonald under Alistair MacCulloch. The Campbells sold Duntrune in 1792 to the Malcolms of Politock. Interesting names. I think it's Poltalock, but you'll have to forgive me. The castle is now owned by Robin Neil McCullum, current clan chief of the Clan McCullum. The curtain wall of the castle dates from the 13th century, although the tower house, which forms the main part of the castle, is of the 17th century design. The castle was renovated in 1954. So let's get into this. So we've already talked about Clan Campbell, and I gave you their tartan before, and I will give it to you again. This is the MacDougall tartan. And their slogan, their motto, is "To conquer or die." Fun. The castle is now owned by Robin Neil Malcolm, current clan chief of the Clan Malcolm. So Clan Malcolm and Clan Malcolm tartan is this. And their motto is "God is our refuge." Kind of like that one. I'm giving you these different clans because it is important to the legend and the lore in the Ghost, the Piper of Duntrune story. So there's this thing called the English Civil War that took place between King Charles I and his disagreeing Parliament. Charles eventually dissolved Parliament and decided to rule without them. This threw the whole country into a civil war that wasn't satisfied until Charles was dethroned and beheaded in 1649. Scotland made an attempt to steer clear of the issues of England, but it soon became very clear that they would eventually be dragged into the issues. So the English Civil War was one component of a bigger war known as the Wars of Three Kingdoms. This not only involved the people of England, but of Scotland and Ireland, they were also thrown into the disputes between Charles and his parliament. At the heart of the Scottish involvement in this war were the Covenanters and the Royalists. The Covenanters had their roots in Presbyterianism, which was a movement that had shaken Scotland over 100 years earlier and caused the dissent between the Catholic Scots and those who fought for Reformation, the Protestants. The Covenanters were also known as parliamentarians due to their support of the Parliament over King Charles. The other faction was the Royalists, which obviously were known to be, in favor of the royals. They were known as the King's Scottish Army, and they were loyal to the king and supported King Charles's policies of governance in England. Now, where does this leave us in our wonderful Duntrune Castle? Enter the Highlanders. So the diverse clans of the Highlanders were differing on their opinions of Charles and his policies. This was due in part to the many cultural and religious beliefs held by the disparate clans. So when it came to choose sides, some clans followed King Charles, the Royalists, and others joined the Covenanters who sided with Parliament. Amongst these divided Highlanders were two clans that knew hundreds of years of quarreling, as so many of them do. These were the infamous Campbells and the MacDonalds. And the MacDonald tartan looks like this. And their motto is, by sea and by land. Even to this day, you can still find places in Scotland that refuse to serve patrons who are in possession of a certain clan name of Campbell. Historians seem to think a lot of the rift between the two clans has been blown out of proportion. However, the fact still remains that in the mid-century, when there were sides to be chosen, the Campbells and the MacDonalds happened to find themselves on opposing sides of King Charles's war. And this became the heart of the problem concerning Duntrune Castle. So there are several versions or regaling of this tale, as it is. Everything that becomes a myth or a legend has to be somewhere in truth first. So there are multiple accounts, though, with the same themes. So the first one, that the MacDonald clan was led by a hulk of a man that came to be known by the name Colkitto. He was a master at warfare and not only fought for his own clan, but was also known to have assisted Clan MacIntyre of Glencoe. And thanks for his assistance, the MacIntyre chief gave Colkitto his favorite piper. He was to accompany Colkitto and the MacDonald warriors on their campaign. So even in World War II, the Scots had pipers in their ranks, playing songs of bagpipes. So pipers were a big part of the war effort. They have battleground music that they would play to encourage their men along. When the MacDonald clan came upon Duntrune Castle in the middle of the night, the MacIntyre piper was also there to take part in the action. The control of the castle was wrestled from the Campbells and left in the capable hands of a few of Colkitto's men along with his prized piper. Colkitto himself boarded a boat and set sail across the Sound of Jura to continue on his campaign, leaving his men to hold down the fort until his return. When the Campbells launched a counterattack to regain control of Duntrune, all of the warriors of the MacDonald clan were killed except for the piper. He alone was left with the intent that he would play his pipes and entertain the Campbell clan. And he did, until one day Colkitto's boat was spotted on the Sound. With permission, the MacIntyre piper played a song that he had prepared in honor of his leader's return, which is it's in Gaelic, but when you translate it out to English, the piper's warning to his master. Soon, the notes drifted across the water, reaching Colkitto's ears. But it didn't take long for the great chieftain to notice something odd about the melody. The piper had intentionally misplayed some of the notes in an effort to send a warning message to his clan chieftain. Colkitto understood the piper's intent and turned his boat around and never completed his destination to Duntrune. And when the Campbell clan realized what the piper had done, they called for the piper's punishment. And what greater punishment could there be than to disable the man, preventing him from ever being able to play the pipes again? The McIntyre's piper's hands were cut off, and eventually he bled to death because of his injuries. So where does this leave us with Duntrune Castle? For hundreds of years, there have been stories of banging noises and flying objects heard and sighted at Duntrune Castle. There have even been reports of a mysterious sound of bagpipes playing on occasion. For many years, people actually thought the story of the mutilated piper was just that, a story. But while a renovation project was underway at Duntroon in the late 1800s, an Episcopalian bishop reported that the workers found the skeletal remains of a man. They unearthed the bones: skull, arms, legs, torso, everything was there, except for his hands. The remains were reburied outside of the castle walls in an unmarked grave. Later, another excavation uncovered the bones of 2 hands without a body to go with it, buried under one of the rooms of the castle. So if you're in Argyll, perhaps you can venture to see Duntrune Castle and see if you can spot a lonely ghost of a piper playing out his pipes to warn his chieftain on Loch Crinan. So that is one of the regalings of the Piper of Duntroon. And I do believe that this castle, as well as the story of the Piper of Duntroon, was also featured in the BBC documentary Castle Ghosts of Scotland, narrated by Robert Hardy, which you can find on YouTube. You know, that takes courage for a piper who was spared to then put his life at risk to warn his clan chieftain, don't come home. The enemies are here. That's all I have today for you guys. I hope you enjoy learning about Stirling Castle's haunts, as well as this little gem of a haunt in Duntrune Castle. If you are still in quarantine, or if you are not able to go back to work or out into the world yet, I hope you are making the most of it. I hope you are staying safe, staying sane, getting some vitamin D by venturing outside, maybe on your porch or your balcony or your backyard, and just being good to yourself. So from me to you guys, one love, and I will see you in episode 3 of Haunted Castles of Scotland.